should play some music to intro this episode, which is a letter I wrote to Verla Insko of my state government, North Carolina. And I couldn't find a way to get it on my desktop so I could send it to Steve Grumpine, who I had one time asked to interview me about my model nation of airports. I've got some problems, I don't have enough printer ink to print anything. Everything becomes real when you print it out. Or say it, I guess. I'm going to try and say it. But I'm having a little bit of trouble with getting, looking good. I don't feel like I look good. Well, if you can't be good, look good. And if you can't look good, you might as well be good, I guess. But at any rate, I CC'd this letter to Warren Mosler, who's the founder of modern monetary theory. I tried not to mention modern monetary theory by name in this letter to Verla Insko of the North Carolina State Senate. It's really intended for all the states, not just North Carolina, but I'm tired of seeing begging, and especially I was incensed at Mitch McConnell for suggesting state bankruptcy. What I don't know what he means by that, but other than hurts people, it would hurt people. A lot of people wouldn't get paid what they owed, right? I mean, isn't that what bankruptcy does? It wipes out a lot of your debts. It's not bad for individuals that everybody should just go bankrupt, The aspect of capitalism that nobody wants to mention is, the few people do. At any rate, without a write-down, without a jubilee, without a regular write-off, capitalism just devours everyone, and a few people end up with every deed. You can't beat compound interest, is what Piketty said. But I'm going to start reading. And the title of this is State Currency. That's the title in the email line. And the heading would became When Federal Dollars Don't Come. When federal dollars don't come, the state treasuries can make their own currency. Ideologues are not pragmatists. Pragmatism is the only American philosophy recognized as unique to America. It is attributed to William James, the Harvard lecturer of 1905. It is the can-do philosophy. American labor is underpaid. The burden of debt makes the typical worker live in a constant state of fear. Your government is yours, and you can make it do what you need it to do. Right now, I'm writing in expectation that Verla Insko will either read this email or be advised of what I have said by one of her staff. I have done years of independent study of government driven by a model of a nation of airports, which informs my recommendations to the state of which I am a citizen. We now live in a crisis. It is a bigger crisis than normal, but for most of the population of North Carolina, financial crisis is grinding. the people who work at jobs that are simply what is available where they live find over and over that much of what constitutes a life free of want, basic want, such as food, clothing, shelter, leaves them little to use for anything else, if that. Rents have gone up significantly since the financial crisis of 2008. TARP cash, was often used throughout the country to buy up foreclosed homes and raise rents under the guise of improvements, when all it really was new debt. The economist Michael Hudson points to fire, finance, insurance, and real estate, and says this eats up all the money of the worker. I highly recommend his book, Killing the Host. Warren Mosley recommended to Italy that because of the way the Euro system has been designed, nations of southern Europe are disadvantaged in regards to the north, and particularly Germany. The German airport management company Fraport took control of 14 Greek airports when the debt of the nation was not written down to levels the Greeks could keep up with. In this way, the parasitical pirates of the banks and what is called banks take over the property of other nations in their economic warfare campaigns. The bankers and hedge fund managers, those with access to funding and favors greater than their targets, such as Puerto Rico, are in to collect deeds. They're into it to collect deeds. Without regulations or write-downs, nations and states progressively lose control of whatever it is they have in common or privately have built up. My government must protect itself, its assets, as much as it protects my private property. I'm not including my gambling properties like stocks. Taxes are real expenses. It appears to me to be even unethical for a state that taxes its citizens to not issue a currency useful for the payment of those taxes. Let me read that sentence over again. Taxes are real expenses. It appears to me to be even unethical for a state that taxes its citizens to not issue a currency useful for the payment of those taxes. How dare Mitch McConnell tell states who end up way short of the funds they require to pay their employees simply to go bankrupt. States are vulnerable to forces at work within our federal government that weakened our positions. As long as we had some trust that our federal system would provide the U.S. dollars we need for essential services, the system appeared to work. Then came the ideologues of privatization. They wrested control of the federal Treasury. I had a typo there. They wrested control of the federal Treasury and were successful in giving themselves our money for their private enjoyment. It is domestic economic warfare. Puerto Rico is our Greece. Puerto Rico is disadvantaged as a territory. If it had its own elastic treasury capable of issuing currency with a national rational valuation, it could defend itself and its citizens from vulture capitalism that aims to buy up discounted bonds and demand 100% of their original value. The time has come for the state of North Carolina to act, to issue its own currency. We cannot depend on a return of a federal government that will properly help the state operate. It costs what it costs and it takes what it takes, is a saying amongst production departments for movies. Warren Mosler did not tell Italy to get out of the economic union. All he did was recommend that they reinstate a national currency for domestic use. As modern currencies flowed in value, so would the Italian lira or the North Carolina Treasury note. Tourists would still be able to use the euro. Multinationals would still be able to use the euro. So ought NC use federal dollars and its treasury notes. I'm not recommending North Carolina secede from the Union, nor would I recommend that. I'm guided a lot by what I've seen of Warren Mosler and that wonderful video in which he advises the Italians. What harm would it do? It would do no harm, but only make North Carolina less vulnerable. NC would be a bit stronger. North Carolina could pay its teachers, doctors, and the rest of its employees in its currency to raise their assets to where they were fairly compensated for the labor they sell in one life. They could, to a degree, reduce their need to beg the federal government that now demonstrates bad faith and bad spirit, denying dollars necessary for the best practices in all orders of things. And I cited Russell. P.S. I have, in an email, asked the greater economist than I, Stephanie Kelton, to counsel states and NC in particular on how to establish a viable state currency. I have nominated Ph. Dr. Stephanie Kelton for Treasury Secretary. She's got a new book out. I forgot to erase my signature line. And so this was my letter that I wrote today because I had told Warren Mosler that I was recommending to the states that they create their own currencies based on the advice he had given Italy. The UK pulling out of the European Union was unnecessary simply because they had control of the pound. And we have to recognize that hybrid war is ongoing between the West and Putin's Russia, which made the wrong bet as far as the basis for their economic successes in betting on fossil fuels, and they trapped themselves in that. So, as it gets warmer, well, they like that to an extent, but the whole rest of the world is paying for it when all this methane and other disease creeps out of the permafrost. There are a lot of other nations in the world. I'm very sorry the UN doesn't have its own army. We might be wise that it doesn't if it's going to be controlled by passive passive people with the wrong spirit. It's been a dumping ground apparently for a lot of national leaders' kids. I tell the funny story about how I used to live on Madison Avenue between 26th and 27th. And on 27th, it was halfway down the block was La Trapeze. Wednesday night, you'd see every diplomatic car lined up, sitting there running, waiting for the diplomats to get out of this swingers club. I theorize that the best place and time to try and influence international events was there in the swingers club, the sex club, La Trapeze. Cost $85 to get in for a couple, and I never really had the money at that point. My business was failing, and I was basically coming apart. That's the long short of that. But my friend at the time, Benny Avini, didn't have anything good to say about the UN at the time. He was on the beat for her writs. So anyway, I'm sorry I went on a little bit, but thank you, and I hope I get some greater success in affecting the financial systems under which I live, and so do the rest of us. Thank you.